I need to tell you a story that kept me awake for weeks. In 1884, Ellen White wrote a prediction so precise about our time that when I first read it, I got chills all over my body. She saw exactly what's happening now in America and around the world. Picture this, a 19th century woman when most homes didn't even have electricity, describing with surgical precision the mental health crisis we're living through today. In The Ministry of Healing, page 120, she wrote, "The mind that is kept serene and happy in harmony with nature will better reflect the beauty of Christian character." Brother, when I first read that quote, I thought it was just nice spiritual advice, but then I discovered something that left me frozen. Ellen White was describing exactly what neuroscientists call autonomic nervous system regulation. She knew about cortisol 70 years before science discovered it. Do you know how many Americans suffer from anxiety and depression today? The numbers are terrifying. 40 million Americans have anxiety disorders. We're living through the worst mental health crisis in recorded history, and Ellen White saw this coming 140 years ago. But here comes the most shocking part. She didn't just predict the crisis, she gave us the exact solution. In Testimonies for the Church, Volume 7, page 65, she warned, "There are hidden dangers that few perceive." Brother, she was seeing our digital age when most people couldn't even read. The dopamine released when we use smartphones creates exactly the same neurological patterns as cocaine addiction. Ellen White warned about artificial excitement that would destroy our capacity for concentration and prayer. Do you realize? She was describing screen addiction 130 years before the first smartphone existed. I'm going to give you a fact that left me speechless. In the year 2000, humans could maintain attention for 12 straight seconds. Today, in 2024, we can only concentrate for 8 seconds. We have less attention span than a goldfish. And Ellen White predicted exactly this. In The Desire of Ages, page 230, she wrote something prophetic. In this age of feverish haste, of tumult and intense activity, many have no time for quietness, for communion with their own soul. Those words perfectly describe our modern American life, don't they? But brother, this is just the beginning of what you're going to discover. Ellen White wasn't making random spiritual predictions about the end of the world. She identified with scientific precision the 3 systems that would collapse simultaneously in our times: the human nervous system, the social system, and the entire planetary system. And the most incredible thing of all, every piece of advice she gave us activates specific neurological systems that modern science is just beginning to discover. Prayer activates the prefrontal cortex. Contact with nature regulates the nervous system. Community life produces oxytocin. Ellen White was a neuroscientist ahead of her time. Let me tell you the story of Maria Rodriguez, a 36-year-old Seventh-day Adventist sister living here in Los Angeles. In 2022, she was completely destroyed by stress, daily panic attacks, severe insomnia, chronic gastritis, sky-high blood pressure. Maria worked as a manager at a multinational corporation, 12 hours daily in front of the computer, checking her phone every 5 minutes, living on coffee and junk food. She had everything society says you need to be successful, but her nervous system was completely collapsed. Her doctor prescribed anti-anxiety medication, antidepressants, sleeping pills. Nothing worked. The symptoms got worse every month. Maria told me she reached a point where she couldn't even pray because her mind wouldn't stay still for 30 seconds. She was desperate until her grandmother, an 85-year-old Adventist, gave her The Ministry of Healing by Ellen White and said something that changed her life forever. Honey, Ellen White already knew what's happening to you. Read the chapter on natural remedies and do exactly what it says. Maria read these words from Ellen White on page 155. Pure air, sunlight, abstemiousness, rest, exercise, proper diet, the use of water, trust in divine power. These are the true remedies. At first, she thought it was too simple to work, but she decided to try it because she had nothing left to lose. She quit coffee cold turkey, started walking an hour every morning in Central Park, completely changed her diet. She spent 30 minutes daily praying outdoors, no phone, no distractions. Dr. Carlos Rivera, a neuroscientist and Adventist at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, explained to me what happened in Maria's brain. When Ellen White spoke about the mind being serene in harmony with nature, she was describing what we now call hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis regulation. That's the system that controls cortisol. The most recent studies show that just 20 minutes of nature exposure reduces cortisol by 25%. Ellen White was prescribing natural hormone therapy 130 years before modern endocrinology understood how our stress system works. In 6 months, Maria was a completely different person. The panic attacks disappeared completely. Her blood pressure normalized. She regained the ability to concentrate and pray deeply. She gradually stopped all medications under medical supervision. Her transformation was so radical that her co-workers thought she was a different person. But here comes the most shocking part. Ellen White didn't just know about cortisol. In Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 345, she wrote, "Fatigued nerves need rest and quiet. Instead of stimulants and hyperactivity, she knew our nervous system would enter crisis from constant overstimulation." I'm going to tell you something that broke my heart. Last year, I met Robert Johnson, a 42-year-old brother from Chicago, successful businessman, big house, 3 luxury cars, but he was completely alone. His wife had left him, his children wouldn't talk to him, he didn't have a single true friend. Robert told me something I'll never forget. "Brother, I have 1,000 in contacts on my phone, but I don't have anyone to call when I need to cry." He lived in a complete bubble of loneliness, surrounded by people, but totally disconnected. His heart was dying from isolation. Ellen White saw this social collapse coming from 1898. In The Desire of Ages, page 512, she wrote words that perfectly describe our era. "Men will become selfish, lovers of themselves more than lovers of God, without natural affection." But brother, she wasn't quoting 2 Timothy chapter 3. She was making a clinical diagnosis of modern society. Ellen White knew there would come a time when people would be more digitally connected, but more emotionally disconnected than ever in history. America's numbers are terrifying. 70% of young adults report chronic loneliness feelings. Suicide rates have increased 40% in the last 10 years. Families are disintegrating at an unprecedented speed. And Ellen White predicted exactly this. In Testimonies for the Church, volume 5, page 230, she warned, "Satan is working to separate families." She saw how technology, materialism, and individualism would destroy the deepest family bonds. Every family divided by politics, every marriage destroyed by social media, every child alienated from their parents. But here comes the most impressive part. Ellen White also gave us the exact scientific solution. In Gospel Workers, page 455, she wrote, "In union there is strength, in division there is weakness and defeat." She knew that community connection was literally medicine for the soul. Dr. Patricia Williams, a social psychologist at Harvard University, explained something that left me stunned. Longitudinal studies with 300,000 people show that active religious participation increases life expectancy by 7 to 14 years. Spiritual community is more powerful than any medication. Robert decided to follow exactly Ellen White's advice about Christian community. He started actively participating in his church ministries. He joined the prayer group, the visitation ministry, community projects, not out of religious obligation, but for emotional survival. In 8 months, Robert's life changed completely. He restored relationships with his children, found true friends at church, met a widowed sister whom he married last year. He told me, "Brother, Ellen White saved me from dying of loneliness. Her advice about community is pure preventive medicine. I need to tell you what happened to the Johnson family here in America. They were a united Adventist family for 30 years. But in 2020, something terrible divided them forever. Social media, politics, fake news. Brother against sister, father against son, exactly as Ellen White predicted. The father, Mr. William, 68 years old, became completely addicted to Facebook. He spent 8 hours daily watching conspiracy videos, sharing fake news, fighting with family and friends. His brain was literally hijacked by algorithms designed to generate outrage and division. His daughter Sarah, 35 years old, a nurse at Chicago General Hospital, saw the lies her father shared about vaccines and medicine. The argument started, then the shouting, finally total silence. 2 years without speaking. An Adventist family completely destroyed by digital polarization. Ellen White saw this coming. From 1895. In The Great Controversy, page 625, she wrote, "Brother will rise up against brother, father against son. The members of a household will be divided, some for the truth and some against it." But brother, she wasn't just talking about spiritual end times. She was describing the end of human empathy. Ellen White knew there would come a time when false information and emotional manipulation would destroy even the most solid families. In Selected Messages, Book 2, page 340, she warned about something chilling. Satan will present fascinating theories to capture the mind and lead away from simple truth. She saw fake news, addictive algorithms, the mass psychological manipulation we live with today. Dr. Michael Thompson, a psychologist specializing in digital addictions at UCLA Medical Center, explained something that kept me awake. Social media releases dopamine exactly like drugs, but it also activates the amygdala, the center of fear and anger. It's a perfect combination to create addiction and aggression. Ellen White perfectly understood how this mental manipulation would work. In Education, page 230, she wrote, "The human mind becomes accustomed and adapts to what it contemplates." She knew that if we filled our minds with toxic content, we would become toxic people. The Johnson family was lost until the youngest sister, Emily, 28 years old, decided to apply radical advice from Ellen White. In Counsels to the Church, page 410, she wrote, "Turn away from all frivolous conversation and from all reading that does not contribute to spiritual growth." Emily organized a family meeting where everyone left their phones in a basket. They read Steps to Christ together for an hour. They prayed together without distractions. They talked heart to heart like they hadn't done in years. It was like waking up from a collective digital nightmare. "I'm going to show you something that left me completely speechless." In 1864, Ellen White had a vision about health and wrote something that chills me to this day. In Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 415, she wrote, "The earth groans under the weight of sin and the curse." Brother, she was seeing climate change 160 years before science recognized the problem. Ellen White knew that all creation would enter crisis because of human greed and sin. Every natural disaster we see today, every extinction, every degree of global warming. Today's numbers are terrifying. Global temperature has increased 1.2 degrees Celsius since 1864. Extinctions occur 1,000 times faster than the natural rate. They found microplastics in human blood. The planet is literally poisoned. But here comes the most impressive part. Ellen White didn't just predict the ecological crisis. In The Ministry of Healing, page 320, she wrote the exact solution that environmentalists propose today. Return to the simplicity of life. Leave the cities full of pollution. Dr. James Anderson, a climatologist at the National Institute of Environmental Health, told me something that changed my perspective forever. Ellen White described with scientific precision what we're seeing now: extreme weather patterns, ecosystem collapse, emerging diseases. As a prophet, she was doing predictive science at the highest level. Ellen White knew exactly what lifestyle could save the planet. In Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 450, she promoted a plant-based diet 150 years before scientists discovered that livestock produces more greenhouse gases than all transportation combined. I'm going to tell you the story of the Martinez family from Colorado. In 2020, they decided to literally follow all of Ellen White's environmental advice. They sold their city house, bought a small farm, started producing their own organic food. Their neighbors thought they had gone crazy, but today, 4 years later, the Martinez family produces 90% of what they consume. Their carbon footprint is practically zero. Their children are healthier, happier, more connected to nature. They live exactly as Ellen White recommended 160 years ago. The eldest daughter, Anna Martinez, 19 years old, told me something that marked me deeply. My friends in the city live stressed, depressed, disconnected from everything. We live as Ellen White taught, simple but full. She knew exactly how to live in harmony with God's creation. Ellen White understood that planetary collapse and human collapse are completely connected. In Patriarchs and Prophets, page 85, she wrote, "Nature and man must work together, or both will perish." She saw that our survival depends on restoring this lost harmony. Brother, now comes the part that kept me awake for months. When I connected all the dots, when I saw the complete pattern, I understood something that changed my life forever. Ellen White wasn't making random spiritual predictions about the end of the world. She identified with surgical precision the three systems that would collapse simultaneously. First, the human nervous system from overstimulation. Second, the social system from isolation and polarization. Third, the planetary system from exploitation and contamination. But here comes the most shocking part. Ellen White did this using a methodology that modern science calls systems thinking. She analyzed how complex systems interact and collapse. This is advanced neuroscience, brother. I'm going to show you something that left me completely frozen. In The Ministry of Healing, page 180, Ellen White wrote, "Every organ of the body was made to depend on the others. The brain controls the entire organism." She understood total neurological connection 120 years before modern medicine. Every piece of advice Ellen White gave us activates specific neurological systems that science is just discovering. Morning prayer activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-control and decision-making. This is proven with MRI scans. Daily contact with nature regulates the parasympathetic nervous system, reducing cortisol and adrenaline. Christian community life produces oxytocin, the hormone of attachment and trust. Physical work releases endorphins, the brain's natural painkillers. Dr. Linda Torres, a neuroscientist at Stanford University, was a militant atheist. She started studying Ellen White to debunk what she called religious pseudoscience. But she discovered something that changed her life forever. She told me with tears in her eyes, Ellen White was 150 years ahead of modern neuroscience. She knew secrets about human brain function that we're discovering now. How is this possible without divine inspiration? Ellen White knew exactly how to optimize every neurological system in the human being. In Counsels on Health, page 240, she wrote, "The mind, soul, and body are one. What affects one affects all." This is pure holistic neuroscience. Today, Dr. Torres is an Adventist, not despite science, but because of it. Every day she discovers new connections between Ellen White's counsel and the latest advances in neuroscience. Her conversion was purely scientific, based on irrefutable evidence. Now I'm going to reveal the discovery that impacted me most in all my research. Ellen White didn't just predict the collapse of the last days. She left us a neuroscientific survival manual tested by 150 years of Adventists. In Messages to Young People, page 340, Ellen White wrote the exact 7 pillars for keeping the brain functioning optimally during the most severe crises. Each pillar activates specific neurological systems that modern science confirms. First pillar, renewed mind. 20 minutes daily of Bible study and prayer physically reorganize your brain connections. This is called neuroplasticity. Ellen White knew we can literally rewire our brains with constant spiritual practice. Dr. Jose Martinez, a neurosurgeon at Mayo Clinic, showed me MRI images that left me speechless. The brains of people who pray regularly show greater density in the prefrontal cortex, the zone of self-control and wisdom. Second pillar, purified body. The plant-based diet that Ellen White promoted prevents 80% of the chronic diseases that kill today. Diabetes, hypertension, cancer, heart disease, all preventable with Adventist nutrition. Third pillar, integrated nature. Daily contact with nature isn't optional, it's preventive medicine. Ellen White knew our nervous system needs nature to function correctly. This is proven with thousands of scientific studies. Fourth pillar, strengthened community. Active. Participation in a faith community increases life expectancy by 7 to 14 years. Ellen White understood that spiritual isolation is literally a sentence of premature death. Fifth pillar, practiced simplicity. Reducing material possessions frees mental resources and reduces choice anxiety. Ellen White knew that materialism overloads the brain and destroys the capacity to find inner peace. Sixth pillar, meaningful work. Finding personal mission based on service to others activates the brain's natural reward systems. Ellen White knew we need transcendent purpose to maintain mental health. Seventh pillar, living hope. Faith in an eternal purpose provides psychological stability that cannot be shaken by temporary crises. Ellen White understood that eschatological hope is the foundation of mental resistance. I'm going to tell you 3 stories of Americans who applied exactly Ellen White's 7 pillars and experienced transformations that seem like miracles, but are actually pure applied neuroscience. The first story is about George Miller, 48 years old, from Detroit. Successful businessman but completely destroyed inside. Alcoholism, severe depression, 2 suicide attempts. Psychiatrists no longer knew what to do with him. He had lost all hope. His sister gave him Steps to Christ by Ellen White. George read these words on page 57. Whatever your past or present condition, whatever your faults or mistakes, Christ calls you. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. George decided to apply the 7 pillars for 90 days as a desperate experiment. He quit alcohol completely, started praying 30 minutes every morning, changed to a vegetarian diet, walked an hour daily on the Detroit Riverwalk. In 3 months, George was a completely different person. His depression disappeared without medications. He restored relationships with his children. He met a widowed Adventist sister, and they married last year. He told me, "Brother, Ellen White saved my life with applied science." The second story is about Patricia Davis, 32 years old, from Portland, Oregon. She suffered from severe fibromyalgia, chronic pain that kept her bedridden most of the day. Doctors told her she would have to live with pain and medications for the rest of her life. Patricia read in The Ministry of Healing, page 120, where Ellen White wrote, "Exercise in the open air should be prescribed as a vital necessity." She decided to follow these instructions exactly, even though the pain was unbearable at first. She started with 5 minutes daily of walking in her garden, then 10 minutes, then 15. She completely changed her diet, following Ellen White's nutrition advice. She joined her church prayer group for emotional support. In 8 months, Patricia was pain-free for the first time in 10 years. She gradually stopped all medications under medical supervision. Today, she works as an exercise instructor for people with chronic pain. Her transformation inspires hundreds of people. The third story is about the Thompson family from Atlanta. The parents, both doctors, were on the brink of divorce. Their 3 teenage children were addicted to video games and social media. A successful professional family, but completely dysfunctional emotionally. The mother, Dr. Sandra, read The Adventist Home by Ellen White and decided to apply every family principle she found there. They established family prayer schedules, eliminated screens during meals, started doing outdoor activities every weekend. Brother, now comes the most important part of everything I've told you. Ellen White didn't just predict the collapses we're living through today. She gave us the exact formula to not just survive, but thrive during the final crisis of human history. In Last Day Events, page 215, Ellen White wrote something that kept me awake. "The time of trouble that lies before us will require a faith that can endure weariness, delay, and hunger, a faith that will not falter though severely tried." She wasn't just describing spiritual trial, brother. She was describing the systemic collapse we live with today and giving us the neurological, social, and spiritual tools to resist. Every piece of her advice prepares specific systems of the body and mind. I'm going to give you the complete formula that Ellen White left us for the last days. In Early Writings, page 142, she described exactly how God's people who go through the final crisis will be. They had washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. This isn't just spiritual symbolism. Ellen White knew that physical, mental, and spiritual purification would be essential to maintain sanity during the final collapse. Every toxin eliminated, every thought purified, every habit sanctified prepares us neurologically. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins Hospital, told me something chilling. "We're seeing an exponential increase in psychosis, schizophrenia, and severe mental disorders. Minds that aren't prepared simply can't resist the pressure of our era." Ellen White knew exactly this. In Testimonies for the Church, volume 9, page 158, she wrote, "The firmest confidence and most heroic faith will be needed to maintain calm when the terrible things that are predicted begin to be fulfilled." She gave us the exact neurological recipe: deep prayer to strengthen the prefrontal cortex, Bible study to program thoughts of hope, natural living to regulate the nervous system, community for oxytocin production, everything scientifically. Perfect. But brother, here comes the most important part. Ellen White knew that not all Adventists would pass the final test. In Maranatha, page 205, she warned, "Many who now preach to others will be found wanting when their own faith is tested." The difference will be in those who really applied her integral health counsel versus those who only had theoretical knowledge. Those who prepared their nervous system will resist. Those who didn't will collapse mentally under pressure. Brother, after everything I've told you, the question isn't whether Ellen White's predictions will be fulfilled. They're already being fulfilled. Every collapse she predicted is happening exactly as she described. The question is, are you going to use the tools she left us? Ellen White wrote in Last Day Events, page 340, "Those who remain faithful to the end must now be determined to make no compromises with the world." Brother, preparation time is running out. Every day that passes without applying her counsel is a lost day. I'm going to give you a specific challenge that can change your life forever. For the next 30 days, implement only 3 of the 7 pillars I taught you. Choose the ones that most resonate with your current situation. Don't try to change everything at once. If you suffer from anxiety or depression, start with renewed mind, integrated nature, and strengthened community. If you have physical health problems, begin with purified body, meaningful work, and practiced simplicity. If you feel spiritual emptiness, focus on living hope. The Thompson family from Atlanta, whom I told you about before, completely restored their marriage, and their children overcame digital addictions. Today, they're a model Adventist family, all because they decided to literally obey Ellen White's counsel about the Christian home. Maria from Los Angeles, who was on the brink of nervous breakdown, today leads mental health seminars at her church. Robert from Chicago, who was dying of loneliness, today leads friendship ministries. Patricia from Portland, free from chronic pain, inspires hundreds of people. Brother, these aren't coincidences. They're the direct result of applying the neuroscientific principles that Ellen White taught us. Every piece of her advice activates specific systems of the brain and body that prepare us to resist any crisis. Ellen White knew there would come a generation of Adventists who would need these tools to survive the time of the end. In Selected Messages, Book 3, page 410, she wrote, "Those who live upon the earth, when the intercession of Christ shall cease in the heavenly sanctuary, will have to stand in the sight of a holy God without a mediator." That means our physical, mental, and spiritual health must be so solid that we can maintain faith without external support. Ellen White prepared us for this with scientific precision, but you have to decide to apply her counsel now, not tomorrow. The final crisis has already begun, brother. The collapses that Ellen White predicted are accelerating every day, but her survival formula works perfectly. You have in your hands the most advanced preparation manual for the last days ever written. The decision is yours.